Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Pakistan's ruling party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, has won the Azad Jammu and Kashmir's parliamentary elections. At a press conference, Chief Election Commissioner Abdul Rashid Sulehria said the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf has won 25 out of 45 seats. He said Pakistan People's Party has grabbed 11 seats, followed by the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz with 6. "46 Afghan soldiers, including 5 officers, have fled into Pakistan after losing their military posts across the border. Pakistan's military's media wing says the Afghan soldiers have been given refuge, food and necessary medical care. Earlier on 1st of July, 35 Afghan soldiers were also given a safe passage into Pakistan on their request. In Tunisia, several people have been injured in clashes with the security forces during a protest over ousting of the government by President Kais Saied. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside the parliament and threw stones at the forces. Earlier, the president sacked the prime minister and suspended parliament after violent protests broke out over the government's mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip, violating the May ceasefire with Hamas yet again. In a tweet, the Israeli military said it struck a weapons manufacturing site that allegedly belongs to the group. Pakistan has received a second consignment of 3 million doses of the Moderna vaccine through the COVAX facility. The country has reported over 3,700 cases during the last 24 hours, taking the positivity rate to more than 7.5%. Meanwhile, Russia has registered 727 deaths in a day as the country witnesses a surge in cases blamed on the Delta variant. Globally, there are more than 4 million deaths and over 194 million infections so far. These were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We'll start from Pakistan, where Pakistan's ruling party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, has won the Azad Jammu and Kashmir's parliamentary elections.
At a press conference, Chief Election Commissioner Abdul Rashid Sulehria said the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf has won 25 out of 45 seats. He said Pakistan's People's Party has grabbed 11 seats, followed by the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz 6. Sulehria added that all Jammu and Kashmir Muslim Conference and Jammu Kashmir People's Party have taken 1 seat each. The AJK Chief Election Commissioner said voter turnout remained 62%. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan thanked people of Kashmir over victory of his party. He said being an ambassador of Kashmir, he will continue to raise his voice on all international forums. Khan said he will ensure that the international community must fulfill its commitment of self-determination to the people of occupied Kashmir. Over 700 candidates contested for 33 seats in AJK's Legislative Assembly and 12 reserve seats for Kashmiri refugees settled in Pakistan.
Now, for more on this, we have with us Manahil Ahmed, our correspondent from Islamabad. Now, Manahil, when are the final results expected and when will the new government be sworn in?
The counting is still ongoing in Azad Jammu and Kashmir for the elections that were held on 25th of July. However, according to the Election Commission, the unofficial results and the counting so far does indicate that Pakistan's ruling party of Prime Minister Imran Khan is leading the elections, and it does seem to be favoring their party. To win a simple majority, any party does need a majority of 27 seats. However, Imran Khan's party does seem to be crossing the 30 mark, which seems to be playing in favor of them, following PPP and PMLN. But we don't know for sure right now when the new government will be sworn in, as it can take a couple of days for the final election result to be compiled, after which the Election Commission will give a summary and announce a date and swear in the new government. But for now, Prime Minister Imran Khan's party does seem to be leading the elections, and the results do seem to be playing in their favor.
Right, Minahil, also update us about the turnout and the general feel of the election day as it happened.
It was absolutely overwhelming and very welcoming and very friendly. There were people from different walks of life coming in and casting their vote, and over half of the total of 3.2 million Kashmiri voters did come out to cast their vote. It was over 50%, which is a really good turnout. And there were children chanting slogans and carrying flags and singing, and just supporting their representatives in their parties. And even every representative of different political parties did come out to support their voters as well. And it was an extremely enabling environment where people were motivated and they were encouraged to go and exercise their right to vote and elect their representative.
Right, lastly, Minahil, tell us what factors led to this victory of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf in these elections.
Well, you see, Prime Minister Imran Khan has always represented himself as the ambassador of Kashmir. On all sorts of different international forums, be it the United Nations or be it the OIC or be it every bilateral meeting he's held with countries of different leaders, he's always brought up the Kashmir issue, and he's highlighted the Kashmir issue highly, And the speech he gave at the United Nations General Assembly did also gather a lot of attention and did, extremely touch the hearts of the Kashmiris on both sides of the borders. And, they do look at Prime Minister Imran Khan as ambassador of Kashmir, especially since he's also made it clear that he will not start a peace dialogue with India till it doesn't revoke or reinstate Article 35A and 370 in occupied Kashmir. So I think this was one of the major reasons why they voted for Imran Khan's party, and I think they have hope, and they think that maybe this time around Imran Khan will resolve the Kashmir issue and will highlight it more than ever, and will try to come to a conclusion with alignment to the UN resolution.
Right, Minahil Ahmed, correspondent Indus News from Islamabad. Thank you very much for updating us on the Azad Jammu and Kashmir elections. Now moving on, 46 Afghan soldiers, including 5 officers, have fled into Pakistan after losing their military posts across the border. Pakistan's military's media wing says the soldiers have been given refuge on the request of the Afghan military. Now, the Inter-Services Public Relations Department of the Army said the soldiers will be returned to Kabul after due process. The ISPR said the Afghan personnel arrived at Arundu sector of Chitral last night. They said the Afghan soldiers have been provided food, shelter and necessary medical care. Now, earlier on 1st of July, 35 Afghan soldiers were also given a safe passage into Pakistan on their request. Now, for more on this, we have been joined by Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodhi, a defense analyst from Islamabad. Thank you very much for joining us on Indus News. Now, Mr. Lodhi, tell us, the United States and Afghan forces have stepped up airstrikes against the Taliban. What impact would it have on the rapid gains being made by the Taliban in the ongoing conflict?
Thank you very much. I think we should also consider that whether it is a violation of any agreement between the Taliban and the U.S. forces, because as far as I understand, Afghan Taliban did not attack any American individual while they were withdrawing. And now that they have totally withdrawn, probably it seems that they have gone back on that agreement. Anyway, what is likely to happen is that with this inaction of the U.S., the environment is going to further vitiate, and any prospects of talks between Afghan government and Afghan Taliban will further diminish. And that is exactly, in my opinion, what the U.S. wants. they actually do not want that there should be a peace in Afghanistan. They never wanted that in the last 20 years. They just wanted to keep this area in turmoil so that Chinese influence can be stopped. Russia and Central Asian countries cannot use this route to the warm waters. The CPEC gets stalled. So all these things are very well known to us. So I think they are just pursuing their policy. One, that they have not honored the agreement. They are breaking that, because once we say that we have no favorites and it should be Afghan-led, Afghan-owned solution, which means that we must leave the Afghans at their own, machinations. So they are not doing that. So I think it is going to further bring bitterness in the overall situation.
Right. Also, Mr. Lodhi, the Taliban have warned Washington of consequences for stepping into the fight again. Do we see a delay in the withdrawal of foreign forces if the Taliban retaliate by attacking U.S. assets in Afghanistan?
In my assessment, they have already left. There is no soldiers, U.S. soldiers left in the area. Maybe only few of them may be there. So there's no question of any delay or not delay. The only thing is that the Turkish soldiers who are there to, look after the Kabul airport, to defend the Kabul airport, maybe their withdrawal is delayed a bit. Otherwise, I think all NATO forces, all U.S. forces, they have left. But one thing, as far as the military assessment is concerned, if such a large force, when it was here, they could not subdue Taliban, definitely these over-the-horizon operations will not be able to harm them much. So Taliban are likely to continue their gains. And of course, there can be a little slowdown. They may change their tactics, all those things. And also, I think it also bodes bad as far as the Afghan government is concerned, because now Taliban will not be in any mood to forgive anyone in the Afghan government.
Right. Now, the international community has been warning of a possible civil war in Afghanistan. But with the widespread fighting across the country, isn't it already a civil war?
It is a civil war. There's no doubt about it. But, international community also think at times, not very correctly, that maybe Afghan Taliban they have no support in the Afghan civil society. All of us who know about the insurrection movements and such operations, we all know that such a long struggle is not possible without the support of the local population. So in my assessment, and I do not insist on that, Afghan Taliban, they enjoy a lot of support as far as Afghan society is concerned. And this civil war will only last as long as American Air Force keeps supporting the Afghan army. The moment that support diminishes or reduces, Afghan Taliban are likely to take over everything.
Right. Lastly, Mr. Lodhi, Pakistan and the Afghan government have shared a rather bittersweet relation lately because of the Kabul administration's constantly blaming Pakistan for its failures in Afghanistan. With the Ashraf Ghani's government now requesting refuge for its troops that fled for their lives into Pakistan, how do you see this relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan moving forward?
We must try to differentiate between the present Afghan government, which has a very limited, say as far as the Afghanistan is concerned, and the Afghan people and Afghan society at large. They are our brothers. Anyone who wants any refuge which we can afford to give, we should do that, irrespective of what Afghan government, the present government says, which I do not think that they have already lost their legitimacy because of two things. One, that Americans, while going, did not take them into confidence and talk to Afghan Taliban separately. And secondly, the way this government was installed, we know it very well. Just with 5% votes, for 6 months the results were not announced. And when the results were announced, two people said that they are the president, so we know all that. So I think irrespective of what Ghani and Amrullah Saleh and Mohib, they keep saying, we can boycott them, but not the Afghan army and not the Afghan people. They are our brothers, which we must try to strive to have good relations with Afghanistan society, Afghan army, and Afghan people as a whole.
Absolutely. Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodhi, thank you for talking to Indus News. Now moving on, the United Nations says civilian casualties in Afghanistan have risen by 47% in the first half of 2021. In a report, UNAMA said more than 5,100 civilians have died as fighting rages between the Taliban and Afghan forces. It said nearly 2,400 Afghan civilians were killed or injured in May and June, the highest two-month figure since 2009. Following the report, UN envoy Deborah Lyons urged the warring parties to step up efforts for peace settlement. Meanwhile, the Taliban have termed the report as biased and false, saying that it almost excuses the US and the Afghan government. In a statement, spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid called on UNAMA to make effort to investigate the incidents closely. More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back now. Tunisia's president has sacked the prime minister and suspended parliament after violent protests broke out over the government's mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Kais Saied has also assumed executive authority with the assistance of a new prime minister. Saied has assigned a close ally to supervise the Interior Ministry. More details in this report. Tunisian President Kais Saied joined crowds in the streets in central Tunis to celebrate his decision to oust the government. Parliament Speaker Rachid Ghannouchi arrived at the parliament to call a session in defiance of Said's move. However, army stationed outside the building stopped the 80-year-old former political exile from entering the building. Ghannouchi branded Said's move as a coup.
Today we were surprised by supreme decisions that not only surprised Ennahda but also surprised the Tunisian people and the world in a country that is proud of being the first Arab democracy and having the latest constitution announcing decisions that are essentially a coup, and it is called nothing but a coup.
The opposition parties, particularly the ruling Ennahda party, also called their own supporters to come onto the streets in protest. Dozens of Ennahda supporters faced off against Said supporters and threw stones at each other near the parliament building.
The decisions by President Kais Saied are not correct, against the constitution and the reality. They bring us back again to 1954. The scene of the parliament closed by tanks is very disgraceful.
Critics fear that President's move is part of a shift away from democracy and a return to the autocratic rule of the past in the country. This is the biggest challenge yet to the democratic system Tunisia introduced in 2011 after massive protests that triggered the Arab Spring. Now for more on this, we have with us Matt Gardner, a political analyst from Tunisia's capital, Tunis. Now, Matt Gardner, thank you for your time. Now, Matt, tell us, President Kais Saied has sacked the Prime Minister and suspended Parliament after protests broke out over the government's mishandling of the COVID-19. Were the protests too violent to sack an elected government, and whether these protests were planted to oust the Prime Minister?
Well, I think we have to look at more of a long-standing approach. I mean, it's not only COVID-19 that has brought Tunisia to this situation. In fact, the economic crisis has been looming large for quite some time now. The Prime Minister himself was in talks to renegotiate yet another IMF loan, which many Tunisians, especially those who were part of the revolution, those who consider themselves revolutionary, to be inimical to the interests of Tunisia and to the direction Tunisia should take. And so, on a more immediate sense, one could see it that way, but I think a longer temporal horizon would be a good idea.
Right, Matt, the critics have called President Kais Saied's move a coup. What is your take?
I'm going to leave that question up to constitutional scholars, but there are some indications in support of that statement. For one, the president refused to swear in 11 new ministers since the wintertime. In recent meetings, he's been tipping his hand to the fact that he would like the people to decide on a number of very prominent decisions, chief among them perhaps the Constitutional Court. That process has been frozen for some time due to political infighting and the allocation of positions that could be elected. And unfortunately, that is the one body that could see a resolution to this current predicament. And so I think that for those who are calling it a coup, one could see it that way. Then again, it could be well within his purview as a constitutional lawyer to argue against that and to say that he is working within the confines of the Constitution.
Right now, lastly, Matt, clashes in counter-protests have been witnessed in the capital. Do you see further escalation in the unrest in the coming days?
I certainly hope not. I don't think that it is within Ennahda's best interest to call people out to violently protest. Typically, Ennahda has been very concerned for its own existential security, meaning that it can remain a player in politics. And it's the major bloc that's coming out against Kais Saied right now. In addition, the military is revered by the people here, very much so, less so the police and the Ministry of Interior. And so I don't think we're going to see extremely violent clashes, and certainly not anything like a civil war, as some have suggested.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Matt Gordner, thank you for talking to Indus News. Now moving on to Israel, where the fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip, violating the ceasefire agreed in May with Hamas yet again. In a tweet, the Israeli military said it struck a weapons manufacturing site that allegedly belongs to the group. It claimed the attack was in response to incendiary balloons launched from the Strip. The Israeli army said the site was near civilian sites in Gaza, including a school. But Palestinian media says Israeli warplanes struck agricultural land and 2 other areas in the southern Khan Yunis city. Meanwhile, a Palestinian youth has succumbed to his injuries sustained from the Israeli army's gunfire in the occupied West Bank 2 months ago. China's Vice Foreign Minister Xi Fang says the U.S. is responsible for the stalemate in bilateral ties. He made these remarks during a meeting with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman in Tianjin. Xi said Washington portrays Beijing as an imaginary enemy to reignite a national sense of purpose. He said the U.S. aims to divert the attention from its domestic public discontent by demonizing China. The Vice Foreign Minister accused the U.S. of launching a campaign aimed at containing China. He urged Washington to change its highly misguided mindset and dangerous policy. The U.S. Deputy State Secretary is also expected to meet the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi today. Meanwhile, Brazil has registered 476 new coronavirus deaths and over 18,000 cases overnight. Globally, there are 4.1 million fatalities and more than 194 million cases so far. More details about the pandemic in this report.
Even the most successful vaccination drives are turning out to be futile due to a surge in coronavirus cases driven by the Delta variant. China, where the virus originated, reported its highest new daily cases since the end of January. In the United States, top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says the country is in an unnecessary predicament of soaring cases. He said the fresh surge is fueled by unvaccinated Americans and the Delta strain. While in Australia, New South Wales has logged its second highest daily surge of the year.
Some settings might change. We might need to go harder in some areas and release some settings in others. So please know that our government is always looking at the best options we have available. And the options are, as I say, our mission is to allow our citizens to live as safely and as freely as possible. And that's always been our position during the pandemic.
In Europe, political scandals over government handling of the pandemic continue to unfold. UK Health Secretary Sajid Javid has apologized after suggesting people shouldn't cower from COVID-19. UK authorities have warned that young people are getting seriously ill from the virus in the latest wave. Amid violent protests and political tensions in France, the parliament has approved another law requiring vaccination passes for domestic travel. President Emmanuel Macron urged people to get vaccinated and shunned the notion that new rules are an attack on personal freedoms.
Le vaccin est entre nos mains. Et donc c'est ça.
What is your freedom worth if you say to me, I don't want to be vaccinated, but if tomorrow you infect your father, your mother, or myself, I am a victim of your freedom when you had the possibility to have something to protect yourself and me.
In Iran, even with a stringent lockdown, the latest wave driven by the Delta variant is peaking. Meanwhile, Indonesia's government has eased restrictions despite warnings that are loosening the curbs, which could spark another wave.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, we have received a second consignment of 3 million doses of the Moderna vaccine through the COVAX facility. The country is battling a fourth wave of the pandemic, reporting 3,752 cases during the last 24 hours, taking the positivity rate to more than 7.5%. Pakistan has recorded 32 deaths overnight, pushing the toll to over 23,000. The country has logged more than 1 million cases since the pandemic began. Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud will arrive in Islamabad on an official visit on the 27th of July. It will be Prince Faisal's second state visit to Pakistan within a year. A Pakistani government spokesperson said bilateral relations and cooperation in various fields will be reviewed in the meeting. The Saudi Arabian embassy said the visit is a continuation of high-level engagements between the two countries. Earlier, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman visited Islamabad in February 2019. The two sides had signed investment deals worth $20 billion during his visit. Prime Minister Imran Khan also visited Riyadh in May and signed several agreements on economic, trade and defense cooperation. Moving on, our US President Joe Biden will meet Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi in Washington, D.C. These are their first face-to-face talks as part of a strategic dialogue between Washington and Baghdad. US officials say the two sides will seal a deal formally ending the US combat mission in Iraq by the end of 2021. They say the goal of the enduring defeat of ISIS still remains, so the mission has not been accomplished. There are currently 2,500 US troops in Iraq focusing on countering the remnants of ISIS. The shift is not expected to have a major impact since Washington has already moved towards focusing on training Iraqi forces. Now, Russia says it plans to set up a special economic zone with no customs and a reduced set of taxes on a disputed chain of islands near Japan. Visiting the islands, Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin said he would discuss an unprecedented set of economic measures with President Putin. Responding, a Japanese government spokesperson said Tokyo would protest to Russia over the visit. The Soviet Union had seized the islands at the end of World War II. The territorial row has prevented the two countries from signing a formal peace treaty. Japan describes the islands the Northern Territories and Russia calls them the Kurils. Azerbaijan says Armenian forces targeted its positions along the border. In a statement, Defense Ministry said the Armenian forces used firearms and grenade launchers to attack in the Kalbajar district. The statement said the attack was launched from various positions in the Basar-Kechar district. Baku said its armed forces are taking appropriate retaliatory measures. Both parties continue to report border incidents since the end of military action in the Nagorno-Karabakh last year. Now, in Nigeria, armed bandits have abducted a negotiator sent to pay ransom money to secure the release of 136 students kidnapped 2 months ago. School authorities in Niger State said kidnappers demanded nearly $73,000 to release the students. The government has said it would not pay any ransom. The school contributed to ransom and some parents also sold property to raise the cash. But they said the kidnappers arrested the negotiator, calling that the ransom money was short. Earlier, the kidnappers released 28 students seized from another school but kept hold of 81 others. Now, in India, the death toll from floods and landslides triggered by the heavy rains has risen to 183. Maharashtra state officials say 164 people have died of different rain-related incidents across the state. The search for 31 people missing in a landslide at the Taliye village has ended. Authorities said they have evacuated about 230,000 people from the flood-hit areas. In the Karnataka state, authorities said over 46,000 people have been safely evacuated, while 9 others died in a landslide in Himachal Pradesh state on Sunday. In China, Typhoon Infern has made its second landfall in the Pinghu coastal area of the country's eastern Xinjiang province. According to the National Met Center, a number of villages in the province were flooded. More than 12,000 evacuation sites have been set up across the province, with around 1.5 million people transferred to shelters. The typhoon has also impacted the China's coastal areas of Shanghai and Jiangsu province with heavy rainstorms and floods. It has also disrupted China's transportation system, causing cancellation of most high-speed trains in Shanghai, Xinjiang and Jiangsu. The Chinese Aviation Authority says the typhoon has also led to the closure of 18 airports in the eastern part of the country. Heavy downpours and thunderstorms have caused severe flash floods across London. Hospitals have asked patients to stay away after emergency departments were hit, causing operational issues. Torrential rain has caused severe flooding in homes, roads and stations. Vehicles were stranded and officials warned people not to travel in the hazardous conditions. In a tweet, the London Fire Brigade said that it has received more than 600 calls reporting flooding. The Environment Agency issued 2 flood warnings and a further 19 less severe flood alerts in the city. Wildfires are raging on the Italian island of Sardinia, forcing hundreds of people to evacuate overnight. Local media says nearly 1,500 people were evacuated across Sardinia. The European Union is sending 4 forest firefighting planes to Sardinia in response to a request from Italy. 2 of the Canadair planes are provided by France from the European Civil Protection Pool. Greece is contributing the other 2 from the resources of the rescue program. The island's governor says around 50,000 acres of vegetation have gone up in flames. Meanwhile, in Spain, a wildfire that started in Santa Coloma de Queralt in Catalonia has scorched more than 3,000 acres of woodland. A large fire broke out in southern France that has burnt an area of around 2,100 acres. It has affected more than 100,000 households. Now, in the U.S. state of California, authorities are bracing for more blazes as smoke columns from raging wildfires could spawn lightning storms. The swarming Dixie Fire has already incinerated more than 190,000 acres in northern California. Officials say the state's largest fire in Butte County is only 21% contained so far. The firefighters struggled to contain the blaze as it gained ground by joining with another fire nearby. Authorities have issued mandatory evacuation orders for the eastern shore of Lake Almanor. Meanwhile, in Oregon, the bootleg fire raged over 408,000 acres and is 46% contained. Now, more than 80 large active wildfires in 13 U.S. states have so far charred about 1.4 million acres. More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has attended the annual Opera Beirut Festival in the southern part of the country.
Angela Merkel was accompanied by her husband, Joachim Saar, on the red carpet for the event. The Beirut Festival, conceived by Richard Wagner, dates back to 1876 and stages his operas. Although Wagner died half a century before Adolf Hitler came to power, the Nazi dictator was his avid admirer. Wagner's work fascinates eager opera enthusiasts who often wait as long as 10 years for tickets to the opera festival. The annual opera frenzy is a highlight of the German cultural life.
Now, in the United States, the 38th annual New Jersey Lottery Festival of Ballooning has returned after 1 year hiatus due to the pandemic. Let's find out more in this report.
The crowd in Redington Township watched as over 100 colorful hot air balloons filled the sky on a clear, sunny day. Redington's calm winds were ideal for the flight as families enjoyed the festival.
I've lived here for 13 years in Hunterdon County in Flemington, New Jersey, and I've never had a balloon land in my backyard ever, and I'm so excited because we were watching them from our porch this morning, and then all of a sudden there was a balloon that was right over our house, and I was like, land! And they finally landed, and I couldn't be happier.
Nearly 100 different hot air balloons participated in the festival. The New Jersey Division of Travel and Tourism claims it is the largest summertime hot air balloon and music festival in North America.
Now, European stocks have pulled back, tracking lackluster global sentiment. Investors are monitoring corporate earnings and look ahead to a key meeting of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Frankfurt's DAX and CAC 40 in Paris have slid over 0.5%. The pan-European stock 600 has also slipped nearly 0.5%. London's FTSE and Italy's FTSE MIB have edged lower as well. Earlier, Asian stocks traded mixed, with the stocks in mainland China and Hong Kong tumbling. And now for the latest weather updates, we have Naila Shuda with us.
Thank you. We're going to start off with Abu Dhabi, where the weather is expected to be hot, with temperatures rising to 44 degrees Celsius. While in Amsterdam, there will be rain with temperatures at 21 degrees Celsius. If we head to Ankara, the weather is pleasantly sunny with temperatures at 30 degrees Celsius. Moving down under to Auckland, the temperature is chilly at 19 degrees Celsius with expected rain. Now, if you are traveling to Bangkok, there will be a thunderstorm with temperatures around 31 degrees Celsius. While in Beijing, there is sunny weather in the forecast with temperatures at 33 degrees Celsius. While Beirut will also be experiencing some sunny weather with temperatures at 32 degrees Celsius. Berliners will experience a thunderstorm with temperatures at 27 degrees Celsius. Heading to Cairo, the sun will be out at 36 degrees Celsius. Down under in Canberra, the temperatures are at 11 degrees Celsius with clouds swirling overhead, veiling the sun. In Islamabad, the weather is also cloudy, keeping temperatures at 35 degrees Celsius. While in Jakarta, the temperatures are steady at 32 degrees Celsius with partially sun in the forecast. That's all we have for now. Back to you.
Thank you, Naila, for the kind weather updates now. And that is all we have for you now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.